Hi there, it's me, Catherine Collert-Page, and I'm here again with another writing process tip. And that particular tip is that we all have a different process. So I've been giving other tips about block and brainstorming and procrastination and those types of things. But the fact of the matter is, I'm telling you about what works for me in my writing. And while I strongly encourage you to try those things and see whether they work for you, we don't all have the same writing process. In fact, sometimes students say, oh, break it down step by step. It's not how to tie a tie. um, it we have different minds, different brains, different personalities, different ways of learning and understanding, and then as a result, we have different processes. Um, I remember recently I was talking to this guy, and he's like, "Oh, you have to outline. You have to outline," and I'm like, "No, I don't." In fact, maybe sometimes I'll have sort of a working outline, what Richard Neumann and Sheila Simon talk about in their book as being a fluid outline. But I'm moving the blocks around as I go along, and as I mentioned before, brainstorming is one of my favorite ways of working, and it all tends to come together for me when I brainstorm, but there are those organization and outlining moments. But what about you? What is your writing process? Well, it helps to know some things about yourself. For instance, Myers-Briggs type. That's something that I talk about actually with my class that can change your writing process. There's actually a book on Myers-Briggs types for law school. So if you are a legal writer, getting that book can help you figure out the best way for you to study, write, take exams, the kind of courses and practice that you're going to want to have. How can Myers-Briggs change it up? Well, some of us are extroverted with our emotions. And so we process our emotions externally. If you process your emotions externally, it's good to go to someone who is helpful with that, whether it's a friend or a family member who is really good at helping you process your emotions, or perhaps a therapist, a good therapist who is good at helping you process your emotions. And sometimes a professor or school counselor, but again, professors have their own personality types too, and they each have their own strengths. And so some professors may be really good with helping you work through your frustrations, and others that just might not be their thing. So you have to find the right person to go to with that. Some people need their quiet time to process the emotional aspect of writing. If so, then that means you need to carve out space for yourself. Some people process their thinking externally. Same rules apply here. You want to find a good study group, or a good critique group, or a professor, trusted friend, family member who can help you think externally. Other people need their quiet time when they think. Anyway, I recommend checking out Myers-Briggs type. There's even, I believe I saw recently, and unfortunately I don't have the reference handy, a sheet on Myers-Briggs type for writing. I think I have it saved somewhere, and hopefully I can find it myself again, because I'd really like to check that out. Aside from, and Sam Jacbosen, who is a law professor, retired law professor who taught in Oregon, has written an article about different learning styles and personality types as they apply to law school. It's more of a teaching-focused article, but it can be helpful for learners and writers as well. That brings us to learning style. So Richard Neumann and Sheila Simon, in their book on legal writing, do talk about the different learning styles: the tactile-kinesthetic, the auditory sequential, and the visual spatial. So the way they break it down, if you buy a shelf from Target, what do? Do you look at the pictures? Do you read the instructions? Or do you just dive in and start putting together that shelf? I dive in and start putting together the shelf, And it's funny, I have these students who are tactile kinesthetic learners too, and I'll talk with them about it and say, yeah, you know, we dive in, we put together that shelf, and it comes out all wrong. And then we have to go back and look at the instructions and the pictures and take it apart and put it back together again. And eventually our shelf still comes together. It's just that there's this frustrating part of the process where we got it wrong. But that doesn't mean that we went about it the wrong way, because just looking at the instructions without interacting, or just looking at the pictures without interacting with it means nothing to us if we're tactile kinesthetic. Whichever type you lead with, you still may use some of the other types of learning styles as well. So even though I am tactile kinesthetic, the next thing that I might do is read the instructions. The last thing that I might do is look at the pictures, but I'm still going to look at the pictures at some point in time. So they all play a role there. What does that mean for you with respect to your writing? I suspect that graphic novelists and comic book writers may be very visually oriented, or perhaps maybe they're tactile kinesthetic too, because that does involve doing something. But here's the cat again. She always has to get in on these videos. In any case, I had this guy in my critique group, Thaxton, who, even when he's critiquing, he's like sitting there on the edge of my manuscript drawing pictures of mermaids and seals, and I sort of thought, hey, Adam, I would like for you to illustrate my book. My friend Ed Briant, who is a graphic novelist, and he and his wife, Lisa Jan Clough, have a 3-book series coming out. He posts pictures every day, and I suspect that might be part of his writing process, is seeing a picture of it. Even if you're doing legal writing, think about doing a picture of things that happened in your case, in the authority cases, to help understand what went on, or a graph, those types of things. Any sort of visual representation, case chart, those kinds of things can be very helpful if you are visually oriented. If you're tactile kinesthetic, you got to be working the whole way through. So you can't just sit there and read a case if you're a legal writer. You are cutting and pasting that case, or putting it on a case chart, highlighting it, interacting with it the whole way through. With respect to fiction writers, I mean, for me, as a tactile kinesthetic, sometimes I take time out and I'm actually acting out the scene itself. I'm experiencing that scene, or I may need to hold an object in my hand, or sort of move around the room to figure out what's going on with that scene. So basically, we don't all have the same process. Figure out what yours is. It's unique. It may have some commonalities with other people. Try some different things. Collect a whole lot of advice from a whole lot of different people, and eventually your process is going to come together for you. So write on.